Crypto prices are in the tank. Prices are way down. Is this what the bottom feels like, or is there more to come? Is probably the question on your mind. And today we are joined by Paul from Dfinity for a look at price analysis on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. We'll also take a look at the US dollar and how other markets are affecting the price of crypto. We'll take a look at a project hot on many people's mind, ApeCoin, as well as Wanchain. There's a big announcement there. Freeway token and other altcoins that I find very interesting. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. If you like money in crypto and you're looking for a real investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. You can do that as simply as liking this video and subscribing with the all notifications bell enabled. Do note that we're not financial advisors. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul is an investor in many, many things. And I personally do own or plan to own most of what I talk about on this channel that I bring up that on the regular shows. Now, on this, we take viewer suggestions on this episode with Paul. So a lot of the stuff comes from you, the viewer. And if you want to make suggestions for next week's videos, go ahead and put them in the comments section below, up to 2, and we'll review it the following week. Special thanks to our Patreon members. We do have private Discord there. Patreon members get access to. And make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show, and let's welcome Paul from Dfinity.
Hey, it's great to be here. I think we're in interesting times, as they say.
Yeah. It's funny, every time you hit kind of the low in the trading pattern, right? There's always all kinds of fears that it's just going to break down and keep going down. And you see all these thumbnails on YouTube of like Bitcoin going to 20,000, Bitcoin going to 3,600.
Wow, 3,600. That's a call. I mean, the thing is, I mean, look, it's possible that the market could go lower, but we have to look at what's in front of us at the moment. And there are still some support levels that haven't been broken that mean that we can't put that call in yet. So if we look at the Bitcoin chart, it's still hovering above this rising support line. And we've said before that the market is in a consolidation. Well, this is what it does in a consolidation. It goes sideways. It's not trending down, which is what it was doing before. It is going sideways. Now, given how strong the dollar is, I think it's doing really well because the dollar is monster strong. And let me just show you a chart of what I mean. So if I go to the dollar index, look at this. This is melting up. So given what's going on, globally, people are worried, getting increasingly worried about the situation, obviously in Russia and Ukraine, and whether it's going to spread further. But sometimes you need this sort of fear to get to the point of resolution. But the dollar is melting up and it's strong against virtually every currency. So from my perspective, the cryptocurrencies are performing quite well because they're basically not going down. So if we look at the bond markets, yields are rising as well, and they have continued to rise. This is basically a straight line. Now, I think there's a chance that because of all these shocks that are being taken by the US economy and the fact that the equity markets might start to fall because overseas earnings from US companies are going to be hit. If the dollar's stronger, then Apple sales in the UK are going to be less, of course, because when they convert them over, they're not going to get as much sterling for dollar, and etc. Expand that out to the rest of the world. So equities might start to fall. That's when the Fed will take the soft option and not raise interest rates as much. That's when the market starts to worry that they're behind, what's called behind the curve. And being behind the curve means they don't raise interest rates fast enough. And then you get this situation where inflation gets even further out of control and people are looking for assets to protect their money. And I think cryptocurrencies fit that bill very well indeed. So at the moment, the dollar is extremely strong. There's the chart again, and anyone can have a look at it. And at some point, I think this is going to V. In other words, it's going to, well, I suppose it could go into a W, but it will reverse like an inverted V. As quickly as it's going up, it will end up starting to go down when the market changes its opinion, whether there's a resolution or whether they feel that the Fed is, they could do it because they think the Fed is behind the curve and they start to move into a currency that they think is being managed better. But either way, given how strong the dollar is, the chart of Bitcoin is actually performing pretty well.
It's amazing. Well, looking at the bond chart, what interest rates have gone from less than 0.5% all the way up to 3%. They come down a little bit, but that's a massive increase over since April?
Yeah, I mean, since basically the low of the beginning of the coronavirus, when it started in 2020, that was the low point, and yields have been gradually rising but accelerating, as you say, since sort of March time. It's really started to accelerate, and it's caught out many people who just thought that the Fed would just keep buying bonds and therefore it was a one-way trade. But for those who've been looking at inflation, it's not really been the trade to have. So the idea is that when at some point these bonds some of the government bonds were actually in negative yield, which meant that if you held the bonds to maturity, you would be guaranteed to lose money, which seems absolutely insane. So I think some of that, excuse me, encouraged some, some of that encouraged some trading of cryptocurrencies, but it's still unwinding very slowly. If you think about where inflation actually is, if it's 5 or 8%, then bonds are still, well behind the curve. Yield should be much, much higher.
Yep. Yeah, and they're struggling to get there. They know what they should do, but then they're afraid to get blamed if they tank the markets too fast, right?
Exactly it.
What I wonder is, see, mortgage rates are rising because of this. And with mortgage rates rising, it usually puts a damper on the real estate market, and seeing a little bit of that across many real estate markets. And as they continue to rise, because they got as low as 2.25%, and now there's between 4.5% to 5.25%. And as they continue to go up, part of the reason home prices got so inflated was because the mortgages were so cheap. A lot of people buy based on what their mortgage payment is per month, and so if they have a 2.25% rate, then they can afford a lot more home, which is what bids the prices up a lot. As the rates go up, then that tends to move down. When real estate prices start to fall, a lot of the money that has kept funneling into real estate then looks for other places to go. And I wonder if the other place to go isn't cryptocurrency. In fact, I believe there'll be a day in the next couple of years where people are selling their investment homes to roll all that money into crypto.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point there. My view is quite simple. Inflation is here and it could get out of control. If it gets out of control, the simplest way to deal with that is to buy assets that are protected by you end up buying any asset. So if the cost of the things that you're buying are going up, you need to hedge. Now, you could buy a property, but that's actually quite a difficult thing to buy, and it's quite a difficult thing to get in and out of. It's much easier to be able to buy and trade assets. So if you learn what assets to buy, then you can hedge yourself very quickly because you can change your view whenever you want, and it's much more efficient to do that. So I think that for me, the story is inflation is here to stay and could start to accelerate. And given that everything is going up, people are going to start spending their money quicker. So therefore, they might start to look at cryptocurrencies as a hedge. So the man on the street is still really not interested in cryptocurrencies. It's still seen as a very specialist area, but something has to spark their interest to get them into it. It's like we say, when the taxi drivers start buying, then you know you're near the end of the curve. But at the moment, they're not really interested because they're buying other things, right? So they're more likely to be talking about either equities or property, and they're not really sure about what this cryptocurrency Bitcoin thing is all about and whether they should get involved with it. I know more and more people are getting into it, but it's still very, very early. So we're not. I use my family as a kind of hedge or a kind of sentiment indicator, if you like. And nobody's asked. I was asked once about it, but nobody else has asked again. So nobody's asked about it. Nobody's interested, and they just, they ignore it. So I'm waiting for that point where lots of people start saying, oh yeah, how do I get into this, and how do I get a wallet, and how do I hedge? Because at the moment they're seeing a bit of inflation, but they haven't seen very much. Much more is coming, I think.
Yeah, and like my mentor said when I asked him what his number one secret to success was, I think it was worth a couple $100 million. And he said, I find out what 95% of people are doing, and I do the opposite.
Yeah.
So I liked your analogy about, like, if taxi drivers are getting in, it's late in the game. And that's so absolutely true. And when it's boring like this, which is why, I say that I buy when it's boring. So when it's boring like this, all the prices are way down, is a good time to be loading up. And then when the taxi drivers are getting in and all your family is asking about it all the time, that's a good time to be taking profits, because by then prices have gone up quite incredibly, which is what has all these people interested. They usually come in after a lot of the gains have been made because they want to see a history of gains. They think it will continue up at that same rate, which it usually doesn't, and at some point flips back around. But that's usually when the masses get in, driving that parabolic curve, or to the moon, as we say in crypto, and then it comes back down to earth. But that cycle happens over and over again. In crypto, it happens in shorter time frames, which is what I really like about it. And, there are a lot of great use cases coming out in the crypto industry, a lot of these altcoins, that I think some of the technology created by some of these altcoin projects will change the world over the coming 20 years, which is why I like to take it. I like these altcoins. Number one, because the gains can be incredibly high, which also means the volatility is higher. Number two, because I didn't get in Bitcoin in the early days, it doesn't have as volatile as swings. Though some people, Bitcoin is too volatile for them. For me, Bitcoin is frequently not volatile enough, but I look at it a lot just to see what it's doing, because a lot of times it sets the trend in the market. Like, I think a lot of the money will start coming into the market when Bitcoin breaks 100,000. That's a psychological barrier that a lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, I finally need to look at it. And then I think it goes off to the races. Then a lot of that money flows into other projects in the crypto space.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you've said many times, if it doubles from here and goes to 100,000, okay, fair enough, you've doubled your money. But if you're looking at the altcoins, there's much more chance that those altcoins would have gone up by 5 or 10x if Bitcoin doubles from here. So it's actually much more interesting to look at altcoins as opposed to Bitcoin. And that's not to say that there aren't opportunities in Bitcoin, but it makes sense from a risk reward perspective.
Yeah, and what I like about them, they're higher risk, but say you put 5% of your total funds in 20 different altcoins, and half of them failed completely, which those kind of numbers, you're actually picking some poor altcoins if half of what you picked failed within a 6-month time frame. But let's just say some bad picks, but you bought in at lows when it was boring, and then at highs when all the taxi cab drivers and all your family was asking about it all the time. You then sell, and let's say you averaged 10x gains on the ones that you did do well. Your overall portfolio went up 5x, which is incredible. Meanwhile, maybe Bitcoin did 2x.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds a lot like the guy who taught Warren Buffett was a guy called Benjamin Graham. And Benjamin Graham had a very similar strategy when it came to investing in stocks. So he would look at stocks that he thought had value. So he would do the similar sort of research that you do. He would buy up a load of very, inverted commas, cheap stocks, and then some of them would fail, but some of them would do extremely well, and he would just hold them until he thought they were too expensive. So without really realizing it, you're doing the same strategy that he was. So he wrote the book, The Intelligent Investor, which then inspired Warren Buffett to do what he did and to be a long-term investor in stocks. So it could be that the future is long-term investment in coins. And so it's a really exciting time, but you may want to have a look at that just because it's a very similar strategy.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That strategy just kind of makes sense to me, right? I like risk to reward ratios and where the risk is somewhat manageable versus a higher rate of reward. And so that's why I like the lower cap altcoins. And then the fundamental research is just doing some digging into the team and what narrative they're in so that I can lower my chances of failure, right? Because a lot of altcoin projects fail, but it's like when you find solid teams that are committed and they have a long-term commitment, the percentage chance of failure goes down. It's still a lot higher than 0% chance of failure. But like anymore, very few of my projects that I invest in fail within the time period that I'm looking at. Though I can't say my first year, the rate of failure when I was new to crypto was much, much higher because I hadn't learned how to, I guess, identify more solid projects and teams. So that's where just some experience comes in, some, painful lessons learned through blood that you don't tend to make those mistakes again.
Yeah, it's almost like in order to be a trader, you have to make those mistakes. There's kind of no way around it, because if you start out and you don't make any mistakes, then it's not that you won't make that. You can't not make those mistakes, because if you start out and everything goes brilliantly and you make a ton of money, then you'll assume that the market's really easy, and then you become complacent. And just when you think you're invincible, that's when the market hits you. If you start out and you do okay, but then you get hit, you learn those mistakes early, and it'll save you money in the long term because you won't make those mistakes again. And that's the interesting thing about the markets. Even if everything went 100% your way, like so many people were trading .com stocks in the early 2000s, and they just thought they were gods. They thought they'd got the goose that would lay the golden egg, and they were just going to be rich, rich, rich. And we knew the taxi drivers and the bouncers and the teachers and everybody was buying, and that was a recipe for disaster. So you don't know exactly where the top is, but there's going to be a massive top. And that's why it broke in 2000. We saw the .com boom and then the crash. But then wind forward and we've seen the market recover. But it took a very long time, because it didn't mean that the technologies weren't good. It just meant that they were overhyped by an overexcited market. So what you're saying is absolutely right. You'll see these cycles appear again and again. The longer you're in the market, the more you'll see that same movie repeat again and again.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Would you mind giving us an update on the inverse head and shoulders that you've been looking at for Polkadot and see where that's at? That's been nice to see your take on that the past month as we've been looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been going on is, just for those of you who may not have caught the show last week and what we were discussing, here we have the inverse head and shoulders pattern. Now, it's not a complete pattern, so you always have to be very careful when a pattern is not complete, because the discipline says that we need this 23.67 level to break to make this a complete base. Now, what was interesting last week was that the market had come down and it just started on the journey of going up again. And if it had got a better momentum, then it was something worth looking out for in case it broke this resistance level and kept going. Now, what's actually happened is it's not really done anything at all. It's just gone sideways. So has it negated this head and shoulders reversal pattern is the question. And the answer is no, because in order to kind of negate the pattern, you need it to go below the low of the left shoulder. Now, it's not looking as good, so I'm a little bit concerned that it's not moved up, because it would have been nice for it to follow through. But by the same token, it hasn't completely negated it either. So if it starts to trade in this area here, then the symmetry would look completely wrong for a reversal pattern. And so if we put this level around 16, which is a good round number as well, so we'll say if it closes below 16, then the pattern is off. But it's still potentially there. It could still happen. It's just that it is weakened slightly because the momentum's come off. So it's a bit of a shame, but it's not completely out the window.
Yeah, it's not as picturesque as it looked like it might end up being last week. But we always try to take the market as it is, not as we wish it was.
Yeah, like you always say, the market's probability. And, I would have been really annoyed if we'd not pointed it out and it was trading up here. Because, this is what it's all about. We're trying to spot opportunities. So if it traded up here or even broken 23.67, we would have said, well, why didn't we pick it? Why didn't we spot it? So part of the game is you shoot for the goal. Sometimes you don't get it, but it doesn't mean you're not going to keep going. And trades are about probabilities. So if you're cautious, we still have to wait for this 23.67 level to break. That is the discipline. That tells us that the low's complete. Buying it on the right shoulder is early, and there is a greater chance of you being wrong because there's not a confirmation of a base. It's almost like we're possibly in the last phases of a base, and this can happen. And so we have to wait a bit longer, be a bit more patient, which every trader will tell you. You need bucket loads of patience for the markets.
Yeah, true. Do you mind if we get into this? Is a viewer pick from last week, Legends of Crypto Game.
Yeah.
It's a project that I had the CEO join us maybe about 9 months ago. And it's had its ups and downs, and it's presently at a low.
Yeah. Now, I think it's, if I can look at it on this, is this okay with you? Yeah. Okay. So, look, again, this is performing well. It had a massive rally here. Massive. That's a really big move. And a consolidation. Now, it's really range bound. So the bigger picture is range bound here. So we can't really say much about it trending. But I'm encouraged by this sharp move up. It's come down a little bit in a correction. Now, the resistance, let me just see whether there's anything specific around that high that caused that. And there is resistance here from this point, but really the main resistance comes up here at 0.40. That's where we really need this to take out, and then it's off to the races. So, as a base, this is looking pretty good. It's made a double bottom and it's hanging around the breakout point. So the buy point for this double bottom was at 0.05. It got excited. It's come back again. I would like it to hold over this 0.05 and trade in a range for a bit and then push up. That would be a really good sign. But if I was forced to do something, I'd say buy. But I think where I would be slightly worried about it if it came much below this 0.05 level, which was the buy point. So I don't want to see it close below that area on a 2-week basis. But broadly speaking, the market's been range bound anyway. So, it could trade down from a long-term perspective and back up again. So this might be one that you put in the bottom drawer and as we say, you leave it for the long term. But compared to some of the other coins, I think it's looking good.
Yeah, it's showing good signs. For me, it's not a bad price. It's not as low and juicy as it was just recently at 3 cents, but at 5 cents, it's not that high above it. I like to buy when it's boring and hold for longer periods. I say for me, it's a wait at this price. If it comes back down to its lows, I would pick up some more. Of course, I probably feel that way because I already have a bunch of it. So I don't feel like if it does take off, I'm going to be left out in the cold. Let's see. Let's take a look at Wanchain. And there is a new article we got from their director of marketing forwarded us that they're actually building a cross-chain bridge with IOHK, which builds Cardano. And that is awesome.
Yeah. So some volume around the 28th of February was interesting. So a big spike up in the volume there. Taking a big picture step back, we had this inverse head and shoulders pattern. You can see left shoulder, head, right shoulder. The sharp kickoff of that reversal pattern happened around late Jan, early Feb 21. Then it traded to $2.60, came right back to that point, which is okay. That markets do that sometimes. They come back retrade at really important breakout levels. This move here would have been the next phase of the trend. So it should have gone up here, taken this high out, and continued. So the fact that this failed here was a bit of a warning sign. Now, one would have expected support around this breakout point to have held at 0.44. So it's dipped below it, which is not great, but it's also then gone back above it. So what we're saying here is that the market is in a fairly neutral position here, because it's made its base, it's had a chance to rally, but it's come back to its breakout point. So I would like to see it accelerating up again for me to get excited on it. So for me, it's a wait, but I think the dominant trend prior to this head and shoulders reversal pattern was to the downside. So we had this downward trend, a reversal pattern, which has now flipped the bias to the upside. So the fact that this has gone up and then come back again tips it sort of 55-45 to the upside in a relatively neutral market. Because if we take this low here, we can draw a trend line that is rising. So, and I think that's fair enough. It's fair enough to draw a rising trend line. Yes, of course, you can also draw one to the downside, but this phase for me was the indication of a change in trend. So the trend ended here, and we're now going up from it. But it's, if we were to take the price where it is now at 0.44, and then we go back to November 2018, it's at 0.44. So what that's telling us that over 4 years, it's basically gone, or 3 years, it's gone sideways, because that was November. So one has to say it is broadly in a consolidation, but this trend is up from here. And that's what I think is the most important and the most dominant part of the market. So I'd like to see this trend accelerating up. That would encourage me to get in. We could also just draw a downward trend line from here as a signal. For me, I need something to trigger me in. I can't use this support line because it's broken it, so I have to use something else. So it would be a break of this line to get me to buy it, and then I could use this lower line as a stop loss. That's a very technical way of trading. But that's what I see.
Yeah, I like this one. I've been holding it now for years. I started getting into it, I think, when it went below, below 20 cents. I think a lot of my entries were between 12 to 20 cents, and I went big into it. And there's some ways that you can farm your Yuan chain on Zookeeper. I've got lots of videos on that if you check out the past history. And so I make some passive income while I'm waiting for Yuan chain to really take off. So for me, I'm happy holding it and waiting for it to do well. I like the team behind it. I like their vision. I like this announcement. Let me just share. Share my screen here. There we go. Guest blog, collaborating on Cardano interoperability. Today, we're announcing new interoperability solutions between Cardano and EVM blockchains. So Yuan chain is building some bridges, some trustless bridges to Cardano and Cardano ecosystem. And it's really cool. This partnership is really big. The Cardano ecosystem, what's cool about it is how loyal the investors in the Cardano ecosystem are to that ecosystem, because Charles Hoskinson, the founder, he has super high levels of transparency, which is very refreshing, not just in the crypto world, it's refreshing overall in the world. And so he's got a lot of loyalty behind him. And so I like Cardano a lot as a project as well. And I think that these bridges between it are really good news.
Brilliant. It's always good to get a bit of positive news there. So, great.
Let's take a look at Propy. Now, this one's interesting. They are working on real estate on the blockchain and transferring title through the blockchain, which blockchain makes perfect sense for title on properties. I'm concerned personally that it's a little bit early for this to be able to happen because there's a lot of regulation and legislation that would need to change. And for that to happen, for this to really become possible, I do think this is eventually where it goes. Why not have blockchain have title for homes? In fact, not only homes, but vehicles and any type of property that has a title behind it, because it is the best place to have a title history is the blockchain.
Yeah. I guess the whole deeds of land. I used to work in a bank, and I did the the effective title changing of property, when we take a mortgage on a property and things like that. And there's a whole load of paperwork that had to be done. And that's ripe for technology. It really is. It's like, it's the sort of thing that you just don't want to have to find little bits of paper which you got, wax seals on them. You just want it to be in a immutable blockchain, so it's perfect. It's a perfect use case for it. Now, as for the technology itself, as for this, of course, we don't know whether this will be the one that wins it or is the dominant technology, but it's definitely interesting. And this area here is building up to be potentially what we call a ascending triangle. So what we've got here is ascending lows with a flat top in what seems to be a relatively positive trend. So these are three peaks. So some people might say, oh, well, isn't it a triple top? It could be. Yeah, it could be. But these lows are ascending, and that's what I'm focusing on. So as long as it can stay above this ascending line, then my outlook will be bullish. So the trend has been bullish from here. So from the 20th of March, this has been moving higher. Now, I know there's been some big retracements, but that's usually indicative of a market that's gearing up to something bigger, a bigger trend. So lows of resistance here at 4.22. Do I want to buy it here? I think I would have to wait because, there's quite a few where I've said they're on a level and maybe I'd buy a bit early, but I tend to do that. I tend to want to buy a bit quicker because I don't mind bailing out quick if it doesn't work. But I think if I might not see this for a few weeks or maybe even longer, I'd perhaps be better off waiting until it's actually taken out this 4.22 level, because there's so much resistance up there. And then just above at 618, then, if it takes that out, it's going to go much higher, in my view, because it would have cleared this consolidation and it'd be on the high of the chart, which is what I like to buy into. I like to buy into strength and that sort of move that we saw in the US dollar. So that's why I would wait here, but I really like the look of it. It's a very interesting project as well.
Agreed. Yeah, for me, it's a wait at this price. Now, it's 1/3 the price from its high of before, which is nice. I like to see it even cheaper when things are slow. And I'm okay if I missed a boat and maybe it continues up. It recently had some big pumps back in January, all the way to about $4. So it's come down a lot from there. But for me, it's like, I don't know if I like the narrative for this one within the time frame. I like this narrative a lot long term, and I like that this project has been around for a long time and they survived the completely bear market. So that's a good indicator that maybe they are able to sustain long term, long enough for, I don't know, for this to be able to be reality. There's just a lot of regulation in the way. And it does seem like regulators around the world are becoming more pro-crypto because they're worried of getting voted out of office if they're not pro-crypto, at least in the democracies out there. But I don't know, so there's politicians, and politicians appoint regulators. Those regulators sometimes are in their position for a long time, and regulators and bureaucrats don't tend to like change, and they're scared of change. It's a risk. So it just takes a while for this stuff to filter through the system. And by a long time, it could be 10 or 15 or 20 years is my concern, unless there's some big disruption and really some big politicians are pushing for it, because it would be a way more efficient system.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right to mention the regulation, because so much of this stuff is so new that it's it's taken the regulators time to get up to speed on it, to even understand it. And so, I mean, I'm not a fan per se of regulation. I think the market should decide, but you know, anything that promotes the wider understanding of this stuff is good, and anything that stops, you know, potential scams is good. So I think there's always a balance to be had.
Yeah, agreed. Well, if you don't mind, let's take a look at ShopX. And we just recorded an interview with the CEO of ShopX to share with everyone his vision of where that's going. Oversimplified description of it would be Shopify on the blockchain, though it's slightly different than that. But yeah, to be able to say it in one sentence, that's just kind of a caption I would give.
Yeah. So this is this split? It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've looked at it before, haven't we? What I like about this chart technically is, it is like, if we look at it like this, it's done this sort of what's called a rounding saucer low. So it's come down, it's made this saucer. And again, one of the features of charts sometimes is they create the symmetry. So at the midpoint, if it's going to do that, it's going to start to go up and then reverse this move, but to the upside, which would be fantastic. Now, when does that happen? That happens when it takes out some key resistance to kick the trend off. So everybody would be saying, oh, it's boring, I'm not interested in it. But technically, it would suddenly look really interesting because it's made this base and it's starting to move higher. So I'd be very tempted to buy a bit early and get in now on the basis that this is going to continue to consolidate for a bit. So it might not move for a week or a month, maybe even a couple, but eventually it's going to curve up, and then we're going to see a strong upward trend. So if I couldn't do that, you know, and actually in reality, we can watch the market every day and every week and put alert levels on certain levels that we really like. The sort of buy level here is at, with all the zeros, 4420.
Would you flip that over to maybe big split versus USD a little bit easier?
Yeah, that makes sense as to why it was. I didn't notice that. I just clicked on the.
There we go.
First, yeah, it's funny actually. That happens sometimes when I'm sure I've clicked on the right one. It's just not. But again, the pattern's very similar. You know, we've seen a downward trend. It's a consolidation. And it's making a very similar pattern of lows. So this low here is lower than this. So this is rounding out. So the breakout point would be 0.19. That makes far more sense now. You know, so 20 cents is the buy point. And then we have got resistance up here at 25 cents and at 29 cents. So it might struggle a couple of times to break out from those points. But eventually we should see some acceleration in inverse to this. So in other words, it should go up as quick as it's come down. So I'm interested in it in this basing phase. So if forced to, if I had to take a position and not see it for a while, I'd be tempted to buy it. If I was going to be uber disciplined, I would wait for 20 cents to break and a close over that. But, you know, I think that's it really depends on which strategy you want to take. But overall, I like the way it's basing.
Yeah, I've been dollar cost averaging into this one, and I recently added some more. And then we did get a connection to their team to come and join us and talk, so that we got an interview with their CEO, so that we just get a feel for exactly where the project is at as far as the team and the team's development. Get a feel from the team themselves or the CEO what's going on, because I like these low prices. Now I picked up some more at 13 cents. I'm praying that it does drop some more, because the previous high it showed on that chart was like 450, though I think it went much higher, like 550 or $6. And so if you think about it, $6, that's like 40x from here, and I like that. So if it goes to 10 cents, then $6 is 60x from here. And that's just going to its previous high. Now there, see, it shows about 450, maybe 470 on the chart, but I think temporarily it hit as high as $7. The chart doesn't always reflect the absolute top, and they did just start recording around that time. So, yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a semi-log chart, which if we put it into, take that off, you can really see, how much it's actually fallen. Because this is effectively flatline from like 21, June 21. But again, it shows what a good opportunity it could be.
Exactly. So this is one of my high risk ones that, actually has a chance not just to go 10x, has a chance to do much, much better than 10x, also has a chance to go to 0, which is why we want to reach out to the team and interview them so I could get a feel for myself and viewers could get a feel for themselves, what they think about the vision of the founder. And then, so I increased my position. I'll probably increase my position some more. So for me, it's a buy. I just bought some at 13 cents, which was a decent price. I'm hoping to get more around the 10-cent level, and we'll see if it comes back down to that. May or may not. If I knew for sure it was going to, I wouldn't have even bought it at 13 cents. I would have just waited. But for me, 13 cents was good enough in case it doesn't come back down to 10 cents.
Great stuff.
All right, let's take a look at Freeway Token. Now, I'm a big fan of this one. I saw this discussion in the VC group that I jumped in. They were talking about scam coins like that promise to pay you like, say, 1% a day or like 5% a day on your Bitcoin, right? And there were a bunch of those like 3 years ago. I've seen a couple of them now. And it seemed like they were discussing those. And they're like, oh, nothing pays 5% a day. So I jumped in that discussion. And sure enough, they were talking about Freeway Token. And Freeway Token doesn't pay 5% per day. It does pay about 3% a month on what they call their supercharger. So Bitcoin supercharger or USD supercharger. You put funds in that, say $1,000 in the USD supercharger, in about a year, if you compound the 3%, it ends up being a little over 40% per year, which is pretty phenomenal rewards. Freeway Token is their token that you have to hold a certain percentage of in order to fully unlock that highest yield number. Because without having 5% of your account balance in the token itself, Freeway Token, you only get 20% yield on your USD supercharger over a period of a year. So they were talking about that one. I was like, oh, I am a huge fan of this one. And there's very different characteristics of this one over a lot of the scam stuff that I saw 3 years ago.
Yeah. So technically, if we look at the big picture, it is in a range. So it's oscillating around this 0.013 area. And it's been doing that for some time. So there's no trend. It's just sideways. But I've highlighted this price action because we have seen a rally from the 11th of March upwards, which is not unusual. It's done that before and turned around and come back down again. But the difference here is that this looks like what's called an ascending triangle. And if you look at the previous peaks, when it turned around very quickly. So it went up, made a top, came back down, went up, made a top, came back down, made a top, came back down. Why is it hanging around near the high? This is the question, and this is what is unusual from a technical point of view. So we're looking at what's changed about this market. So I think that this looks interesting from the short-term perspective, and given that this is an ascending triangle, a potential ascending triangle, I think it's worth buying it. So what should happen for this to be a valid pattern would be it takes out the high, which is at 0.02, and then it just goes straight up. So we need a straight line move to the upside, and that should happen within a few days. And we say that because the apex of the triangle comes in around the 5th of May, which is not far away. So it's being painted into this corner effectively because the resistance is flat and the lows are rising. So at some point, it's either going to break this resistance line or this support line, and time is running out. So something's going to happen soon. Given that the prior trend is up, the breakout should be to the upside. Now, that's not guaranteed. It's just that the probability favors the upside given the technical situation. So it looks interesting. Because of the technical pattern, I'd have to say buy.
Yeah. I like this one a lot. I have huge loads of this token. I also have some money in the superchargers. I plan to put a lot more in the future, but I've been stocking up on the token itself. Now we see the platform working. Their assets under management are rising very quickly as people are putting money into the USD supercharger and some the Bitcoin supercharger, the ETH supercharger, a few other things. They have a Cardano supercharger. So not only do you get exposure to Cardano's price going up, potentially going up, you also can get additional returns on that. And so there's a link below for anyone that's interested in that platform. There are much more in-depth videos that I've done on it in the history. If you go to the channel and you click on the videos tab, you'll see a lot more in-depth analysis on Freeway Token and the Albit platform. All right. So yeah, for me, it's been a buy. It's really interesting that it's been going up and the rest of the market's been going down. That doesn't mean it will continue going up, but it shows that there's a lot of price pressure. And I think that is because the platform is starting to get some use. People are doing well. They're telling their friends about it, and it's getting more exposure and increased credibility because of that.
Yeah, you make a very good point. It is going up against the rest of the market going down. So the relative strength is important, because if everything else starts to go up, you might think that this won't go up as fast, but usually that means this will go up faster.
Yeah, agreed. Well, there is one token I wanted to look at from you that is high on a lot of people's mind because it has done really well in the past week, and that's ApeCoin. Now, this is the coin related to the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT project that's done so exceptionally well that the creators of that actually bought the CryptoPunks, which also created Meebits. They bought out that company and their intellectual property rights. And so it did so well, they bought out what used to be the most successful NFT project. And then they created this coin, and they're supposed to be creating a metaverse with land and a video game associated with this coin. And so I guess the land sale's coming up. And with that, this token price has pumped tremendously and currently trading at close to $20.
Yeah. It's you can see why it's hovering just below this level, because it is so important. That's the high. That's the previous high. So the previous high was around 20.42, and it's trading just below the round psychological 20 level. So, I mean, it's always a difficult call when there isn't that much data. So there's only a few days. So what can we say about it? This sort of 1, 2, 3 right on the same level where there's tons of resistance makes it fairly simple that if it can take that out, it should squeeze much higher. So you've got two big barriers. It's almost like if it can get through these barriers, then it should at least have a short-term surge. I can't say for the long term because it's difficult. There's not a lot of data, so anything can happen really. But it's knocking on the door of some important levels. So I think I would, want to buy it here because it's pressing against resistance. Now, if we're still at these levels in about 2 weeks' time, then the pressure's come off and I'd have to rethink. But this is trending up. That was a little triangle. I like it when markets return to prior resistance points because when it does that, it gives a very clear goal to break that resistance and move higher. So part of a broader trend is that the market has to take out highs. So the fact that it's coming back to it is a good sign. Now, I don't know whether the market cap is high and whether it's expensive from that point of view. It also, whether it be considered to be, a little too hot. I'd be careful if it's just like one of those things that's running around the chat systems and that people are chasing it. So that would make me a little bit concerned. But at the moment, the price action seems to be behaving, and I would expect it, if it's going to go, it should go quickly. And if it doesn't, then I would be a bit more cautious.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's good to look at this point and just see if it breaks up. And then if it breaks up strongly, especially if it breaks up, retests, and then starts heading up, then it's likely to go up more. But it could very much like hit the ceiling of resistance, especially because it's super in the hype cycle right now, right? So many people talking about it. And maybe it continues up from here, or maybe it starts to slow down in the hype cycle. And so if it hits this as a resistance and starts heading down, might signal that it's at a top. It's not ready to break through that high price point at this point, and possibly not in the next few months. So for me, it's definitely a wait. I'm just going to wait and see if I do end up trading this one, and only because I see a clear breakout to the upside, and it would just be a short-term trade for me.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that there's do you think sentiment's running hot at the moment? Because if it's
on
if
this
it's,
one,
yeah, because okay, then I'd have to be more cautious for the exact reason that you said at the top of the show. You know, the contrary trade is usually the right one. Now that doesn't mean that it's not going to go up, because you can have like a contrary view where the market just keeps going for months, right? But that just adds a little sort of sprinkle of caution to the view. If this was like really quiet and nobody was talking about it, I would just say, yeah, buy, definitely, because it's looking good. But it's the sentiment that's worrying me slightly.
Yeah, the team that created the Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? They did some things very, very right. A lot of people were creating NFT projects at the time. Their artwork is fun. Like, their apes aren't too serious. They did something special, which they gave people who held the NFTs the intellectual property rights for that NFT. And so that doesn't mean you can make 1 million shirts and sell it with that, but you can make a shirt for your own, or for your friends, or limited, and that you own. Like if you own Bored Ape Yacht Club number 1056, like it's yours. And they really did so exceptional on that every time those trade hands, they make a percent fee. I don't know if it's 5% or 10%. What their fee is probably around 5% every time one of those changes hands. And now that those go for 200, 300, 400, 500,000, a few of them over $1 million, every time those change hands, $1 million one sells, they make 50,000. So they've been flush with cash. And so their project that they released has its own like status, which is pretty high now. So they're making a video game, and they're making like a metaverse. And the truth is, I don't know how good them or the people that are hiring are at video game development. Obviously, they did good with this project. Does that extend into knowing how to hire and manage the right team to build a video game that people would want to play? That I don't know. Or the metaverse that people want to participate in? I'm not certain on that. That's what I'm watching, and I don't like to chase boats that I miss. So the only way that I'm going to buy this one is if a clear sign that is breaking to the upward trend. It'd just be a short trade. So for me, it's just to kind of wait and see what happens with this. Its fully diluted market cap is already pretty high. The fully diluted valuation on this is almost $20 billion. And the market cap at present is $5.5 billion.
That's tasty. It's yeah. So, I mean, what you were saying is, as a question was, as you were saying, it was exactly what was going through my mind. The fact that they've got some cash to spend is great, but you want to make sure that they're spending it the right way.
Yeah, and I don't know. They clearly hit it out of the park with their NFTs surpassing CryptoPunks even, which is quite a feat. Like, really amazing job by them. And if you do look at their artwork, it's really, really cool. And they have celebrities like Justin Bieber has bought one, pro U.S. football players have bought some. I mean, actually some international sports players as well have bought one to be able to put as their profile picture on, like, say, their Twitter account stuff. So when you reach the status where celebrities, huge celebrities, some of the biggest celebrities are buying your profile pic project in order to put as their profile picture, I mean, you've made it. But does that extend to a video game and other things? It depends on who's building that video game. If the video game's pretty good, it'll do exceptionally well because of the brand recognition they've created. But I don't know who's building it. So that's for me, to find out in the coming weeks and months to look into deeper. But for now, I'm just watching this one. It's already pumped. The only way I buy is if it breaks solidly $20 and is heading up, and it'd just be a short trade.
Yeah. Great.
All right, let's take a look at OMI, one of my favorite long-term projects.
Yeah. Right now, from memory, I think this is gonna be off.
Ikomi. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be able to find it on.
Yeah, I just see if it's on here because no, it's not. That's it. It's definitely not there because it hadn't updated. I remembered that from before.
Ikomi is the symbol.
Let's see if it's
that one. Ikomi versus Tether, and it looks like that is current.
Yeah, so that's the current one. Yeah, this is a good long-term one. I think we looked to buy it all the way around September last year, and it went up. It's consolidated. It's come back again. It's in its boring phase, and not a lot is going on here. It's not, completely collapsed down in a worrying way that it did here. But even when it did that, it turned around very quickly. Mm-hmm. So for the moment, I think it's a wait. There's not much to say about it technically. There's some really good support at this 0.0023 level. It's against Tether, isn't it? Yeah, so there's some good support here, which I can see why it stopped. If it breaks that, the next level that we could be looking at is 0.0016. And I wouldn't want it to get much below that because then it would, to me, be a little bit of a concern. I want it to hold some of the support. So for the moment, it's a wait. I think it's just going to range trade for the moment. But I do think longer term, there's potential for it to come and take this resistance out. It's a shame it didn't do it here. But the rest of the market, to be fair, was against it. We did see a big correction. But if we look at the way Bitcoin was trading around this time, Bitcoin was high, then collapsed, and then it went sideways. So I think this will probably follow a similar pattern and go sideways. Then eventually we'll see it recover. But for the moment, it's got to be a wait for me.
Yeah, for me, if we pull that chart back up, it looks like a big W. In fact, we can share my screen and let me remove the drawings that I have here. What I see in this, and I don't have it on logarithmic scale, I just have it on the regular scale, so I can see the severity of the price increases. But for me, this looking like a big double bottom or a W. And I expect some rounding here, and then probably off to the races is my guess, with it often coming back down to meet these levels, just touching as it then takes off. And my prediction for this one, so I really like it at its present price. I doubled my position in the past number of weeks. I had increased my position slightly when it was at this decision point. Let me share my screen again. There was at this decision point here, and I didn't know whether to break up or break down. And it was around the top side of that. I bought a little bit more. And when it went against me and went down, instead of selling that, what I did was I just doubled my whole entire position down here because I like this one so much for the long term. And it makes me feel better about having lost some value here and going down. That's okay because I hugely dollar cost averaged in at this lower price. And so that when it does go up, and I say when, you never know for sure. The company could fail. I don't see any signs of them failing. But when they go up tremendously, it puts a big smile on my face that I made that kind of move. When it went the way I always knew there was a chance it would break down, and it did break down. So I turned a negative into a positive.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's where a knowledge of the background to the asset is so important, because for me, it can only look good for me technically. And I sense that people like you buying when you see some great opportunities is what slows the decline, what actually pushes it sideways. And then the next phase is people who then jump on that bandwagon a little further along. And to be on it early is a really nice thing. That's just something I can't do because I have to, because I haven't done the research that you've done, and that's the only reason. But I really respect it. And as I was saying at the top of the show, this is exactly what, Ben Graham and other sort of fundamental analysts did. They looked at they looked at these projects or stocks and said, look, this is a really good thing, and it's cheap. And if you're going to buy it when it's cheap. So yeah, really interesting. So we'll have to wait and see.
Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us, Paul. For those in the audience, are you ready to be a rainmaker if you're not already, and join what I call the Navy SEALs of crypto in order to level up your crypto game? Why Navy SEALs? Well, Navy SEALs are not just above average, but the best, right? And in crypto, did you know that just 15 minutes or so a day of learning over time will put you in the top 1% to 2% with your understanding of the crypto market? If you use that knowledge and understanding towards smart investment principles, which we talk about here, I think your journey in crypto is going to be an amazing one. Remember, no rain, no gain.
Came into the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss, cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, but leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dumped it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. The next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road, consumer come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.